Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us today. My name is Timothy Lee. I'm a research analyst at Red Cloud Securities, and I'm delighted to host a Red Cloud webinar on gold exploration and development today. We will hear from Jason Bonson, President and CEO of Tempus Resources Ltd. During today's webinar, he will provide an overview and outlook. Then we will take questions. You can type your questions into the chat box at any time, and we will get to as many as we can. Before we kick things off, first we need to discuss the fine print. During this Tempus webinar, forward-looking statements may be made. I would direct listeners to the company's forward-looking statements disclosure outlined on page 2 of the Tempus corporate presentation, and that can be found on the company's website, tempusresources.com.au. For Red Cloud Securities, Inc., I would highlight that this webinar is for information purposes only. It should not be considered a solicitation or recommendation to buy or sell securities. We note that this call does not consider the particular situation or needs of individual investors. Participants should rely on their own investigation and seek their own professional advice before investing. Please see our most recent research located on the Red Cloud website for specific disclosures pertaining to Tempus. So we have Tempus presenting today. The company has a portfolio of projects in British Columbia and Ecuador. The flagship is the Elizabeth Blackdome Project in British Columbia, where the company has been drilling high-grade gold veins in a past-producing mining district, including some impressive assay results reported just recently. The company also has gold and copper exploration properties located near operating mines in Ecuador. With that, I now turn it over to Jason to update our audience on the company.
Thank you, Tim, and welcome, everyone. Thank you for attending. As Tim mentioned, we've just released some quite spectacular results on Monday this week. Here's the disclaimer that Tim referenced. Please take that as read. Tempus listed in Australia, for those that you don't know, and also on the venture under TMRR on the venture, with 236.9 million shares outstanding. Quite a few options were part of a previous financing that are at 7.5 cents. There's 100 million options. That's why you see a lot of options there. Share prices had a lot of activity in the last few days. We halted the stock in Australia and then in Canada, and then released some long-awaited drill results from a drill hole number 20 on the number 9 vein. We'll discuss that in more detail. There's a lot of volume on both the ASX and on the TSX.X now, and currently about 7.5 cents. I won't go over the board too much. The management team, it's an Australian listed company, but I'm based in Vancouver. I'm Jason Bonson, based in Vancouver. Our geological team's all based here, close to the project, which is Blackdome-Elizabeth. So this is our core focus of the company, and it's located really not that far from Whistler, a couple hours north of Whistler. So, quite far south, a couple hundred kilometers total from Vancouver. And one of the things that attracted me to the company is just the overall region here and the other players. There's quite a bit of optionality built into that. And, the key comps that we look to there is both Talisker and Westhaven that are around $50 million sort of market cap company. Well, we're at about sort of 20 right now. So I think there's as people get to know the story, there's a re-rating opportunity. And, all of these companies are essentially a similar stage in terms of pre-resource exploration drilling stage. But, built into this region here, basically Brain and Pioneer region, is a lot of both operational optionality with regarding mills, future mills, and also potential corporate opportunities if these companies were ever to combine in some way. So it's nice to have that optionality. And as let me just go back to there again, just to make one other point. These projects here, Blackdome and Elizabeth, they're effectively the first time they've been under a joint ownership. Previously, it was just a sort of option that was in somewhat state of disarray over Elizabeth. The previous, we purchased this from Skeena Resources. This was non-core to them as they were focused on Highland Valley. And a black dome, which you see, and it's joined by a small, on the left-hand side, a small line of claims, which is actually a future haul road that's about 80% complete. So it's that joins what is a existing mill that's fully permitted and an existing tailings storage facility. It's all fully compliant on our mining license there. So it gives us a lot of flexibility with regard to if we wanted to bring this into production. But where all our exploration is focused, which is 30 kilometers to the south on the Elizabeth Gold Project. In total, there's about 300 square kilometers of mineral licenses there. So just kind of zooming in now on what we've been doing with this project since we started drilling on it about two full seasons and a little bit the previous fall, winter. But we've drilled in total about 20,000 meters of drilling. We completed about 10,000 this year, 40 holes. And when we acquired it, this had an existing historical resource, 200,000 ounces. And the majority of that resource and majority of all the previous exploration was in this one vein, this southwest vein. And that accounts for about 70% of that historical resource. And there was a little bit over here in the west in the main vein. But, and this was a vein that outcropped. So we've done quite a bit of, last year, we did quite a bit of infill drilling on the southwest vein to improve that from the inferred category it was. And we're planning, by the way, to do a resource in the new year that's going to encapsulate all of this drilling we've done. And about 80 holes in total, new holes on the resource. But since last year, we discovered this blue vein, which didn't outcrop, and that's turned into a significant vein with some very high-grade intersections, as well as this number 9 vein that we just released the intersections of today, or on Monday. So we drilled 10 holes on this number 9 vein, and the intersection we just released included 28 grams per ton over 28.5 meters. Quite a spectacular intersection. And what we're seeing there, and we'll talk about the individual veins, but you know, now that we've drilled this fan of holes at the number 9 vein, and as it's where it's highlighted by the dashed circle, is an area where we think these veins come together, and this number 9 vein is in fact just a spur off of the blue vein structure, is the main dominant structure, and we think they might both continue to the southwest as indicated there, and the junction or intersection is maybe very prospective, and that hasn't been drilled. All that other drilling you see is focused on both the blue vein, the drilling that's coming in that direction. So, you know, we've over this year, we've effectively, you know, further defined the blue vein that we discovered last year and added another vein. And, you know, we think this is the way we see the proximity of these veins is about 150 meters apart at the most, 100 to 150 meters apart. And we think it's prospective for further veins as well. There's 9 known veins occurrences on the property, and we think there's probably more. So, you know, we're starting to see, you know, if each of these veins are about 400 or 500 meters long, with various, you know, drilling, there would be no more infill drilling, but these will all go into an updated sort of resource calculation, which we're hoping will be significant. So looking at some of the, you know, the intersections, this is a cross section of that number 9 vein. And it's interesting. You'll see a small, it says number 9 underground workings. There was a small adit there done in 1940, and in that adit they identified a couple hundred feet along the left-hand wall that they'd intersected quartz and with gold and nice grades on an ounce per ton basis, etc. But then it kind of petered out. And what I think they missed the whole section. So what we're seeing is in this quartz, and this is what's showing on this cross section, is the high grade hits we've had are above that, and to the east or to the left, the right, I guess, of that underground working. So they effectively missed that. And so, here's the intersections that we've just announced on Monday, the 28 grams over 28.5 meters. And this isn't deep either. That's from 84 meters. And you can see each of these vertical lines on the diagram are 100 meters vertical. But within that, it was like continuous. And we had previously announced that we'd found a lot of visible gold throughout this hole, spread out over that 28 meters. And you can see the high-grade intersections are significant in their own right within that 167 grams over 1.35 meters, 172 over 1, etc., 35 over 3.6. So when we're looking at for a resource statement now, and just debating the sort of cutoff grades for underground now and at current gold prices, you're looking at something like 3 grams. So I mean, these can carry a significant amount of mining width when if they were to be mined. There's even 4.2 grams over 6.75 meters there. So definitely spectacular grades, and some of the most spectacular I've seen in my career with this. A second hole, we see 49 grams over 1.2 meters. So we're starting to see out of these holes some continuity along strike. And we have 3 more holes in the number 9 vein, including a hole number 28 that was drilled on the upper portion. If you look at this map, where the stars are indicates where we've announced visible gold in the hole. So you'll see on the top part of that number 9 vein. So it's very interesting indeed. And in addition, we have the blue vein, which, even though this number 9 vein intersection took the highlights of this particular announcement. In this announcement, we announced 2 blue vein holes. One was 47.6 grams over a meter, and another section with about 3 meters of sheeted quartz over a section with grades up to 33 grams. And but then you'll see some of the other holes. The actual discovery hole was this top one on the left in the column, the number 12 last year. He said 2112, where we just drilled a blind hole going back, and we hit a meter at 33.7 grams per ton. So I've seen some other, spectacular intersections already this year. To 2209, a meter at 322 grams. So, I mean, this is grade that really carries this. And what you can see here in this blue vein, how it's sort of developing as 2 sort of significant shoots. And this is what we've seen in the southwest vein. If we just sort of shift to that, here's the southwest vein that we did a lot of drilling on. This is the one that within these circles is the historical resource of about 140,000 ounces out of the 200. We've done a lot of infill drilling, some deeper drilling there, and this is all going into the updated resource. So we have it established over about 400 meters in total, with the really high grade areas in the sort of 150, 200 meters with some depth there. We have about 100 meters vertical sort of defined, and maybe a little bit more in some places. So all this adds up. There's a, it's, on a cross section, you can see these veins are all very close together. There's these historical portals. We wouldn't really use them. They're old track drifts from 1940, but it's very conducive to simple mining, where you would drive a centralized access drift between these veins and then cross cut out to them, and then have all that vertical above you to mine. So it's becoming quite a compelling project. We see, as you see here, between the blue vein and the southwest vein, we already have something we're looking at, is the number 7 vein. We haven't quite got it figured out. We need to put some more drilling in here. And likewise, there could be further veins. There's been very little historical drilling between the southwest vein and these west veins. And we're seeing them at, typically at, sort of 100, 150 meters sort of spacing. So it's very nice from a mining perspective as well. It's all hosted in granodiorite. This slide shows some of the intersections. We've talked about some of those sort of highlighted intersections. And really, if you look at the bigger picture here, this is actually a 300 square kilometer property. And where we're looking at here in terms of this drilling is what's shown on this map is Elizabeth, Maine. One of the things we identified when we did some aeromags, airborne aeromagnetic beginning of last year, is the overall porphyry that hosts the quartz veins, the granodiorite intrusion is much larger than previously thought, and a lot of it's overlain with the ultramafics that it wasn't obvious from surface. But this kind of shows to scale, as does the next one. The sort of scale of the overall porphyry is much larger than we thought. This sort of shows, we talk about a reference sometimes to Braylorn, which was similar orogenic style mineralization, mined down to 2,000 meters. This is the sort of scale of the drilling. We're just starting to scratch the surface here. So, we'll see. But these sort of style of mineralization can have extensive vertical extent. Just turning briefly to the mill. The mill at Blackdome. This is how it looks now. It operated based on ore from the Blackdome property, which is the mill is on. Just 300,000 tons from 1985 to 1991 at a very high grade, 22 grams per ton. And then gold was with $350 an ounce. It's different time. Company was high grading it a little bit. But that mill is in very good shape, and we've done a considerable amount of work, done inspections on it, completed a detailed engineering review, looking at what equipment we would add, what's the cost of that, what's the layout, and we have a sort of nominal capital cost worked out for bringing that mill back into production and the associated tailings dam. And the nice thing is, from a permitting point of view, if we decided to move this project to that phase, this is all on an existing mining license. And so it's a notice of work. There's some other permits, but it's not the same thing as starting from scratch with an EIS and everything associated with a new tailings dam, things like that. And it's all in compliance and just been updated to our 5-year closure plan on the tailings dam, etc. It's a great infrastructure asset to have, that the replacement costs would be very significant in comparison. We've done metallurgical work using that existing mill circuit layout. This is previous work that had been done using Elizabeth core. There's no refractory nature to the gold here. It's all free milling. So historically, it was run as a gravity plant to small flotation, and they were taking the producing doré out of the gravity and selling the con from the flotation to a third party. But we've also looked at opportunities to add a cyanidization circuit to increase the size of it. So we know what a few of those sort of options are now. So, a lot of this ways it starts to, have some similarities to a development story where we have this infrastructure in place and we're doing some of that preliminary engineering work. This is Black Dome itself. We haven't spent a lot of time. We've done a little bit of initial drilling here. This is an epithermal deposit. We'll have a defined vertical horizon. We want to do a little bit more like sort of fluid inclusion work and detailed geological work that doesn't cost very much, and see where we are in that system, and we may come back to that. But that's sort of some blue sky, really, from the project point of view. So the main focus is on Elizabeth. Then I guess we should just keep going, and I'll cover Ecuador unless you want to break for any questions on this now. But if I won't spend too much time on Ecuador, there's we have two very interesting projects there, and we have been progressing them over the past couple of years. They're in a great neighborhood, but really, as Elizabeth has started to develop, that's really our sort of core. So we're looking at some options here, but here's the neighborhood. They're in southeastern Ecuador, right in a belt of major copper porphyry operations and other deposits. You have Mirador at the north end, which is, I think, about 20 million tons a year operation, open pit copper porphyry. You have Lundin Gold running Fruta del Norte, about 350,000 ounces per annum right now. Our Rio Zarza license is the extension of Fruta del Norte, the down thrust extension. We're just on the edge of the fault there. We have drill permits in place to drill some holes there. We have been doing some work on the other project to the north of that, Valle del Tigre, looking at it from both a copper porphyry and a gold perspective. Certainly we've done geophysics and soil sampling, and the next stage would be the identification of drill targets. So it's very interesting early stage, but very, very interesting sort of projects. They're in the right neighborhood. They're in elephant country, have the potential to turn into something. This is the Rio Zarza one that we have. There's some previous drilling there. We have permits to drill these holes. But I think with our focus on Blackdome-Elizabeth, from a corporate point of view, strategically, we're going to, look at opportunities where we can do a joint venture with that, retain some upside, retain a royalty, some sort of earn-in arrangement. Couple points, just summing it up. This is very, very high grade, and we're finding more and more of it, which is great. And we have a number of veins under development now, and I think we're going to find additional ones as well. And we have the benefit of having all this infrastructure in place. From terms of catalysts and near-term events, we have more results to release, including some that had some visible gold from the vein number 9. We have another 6 holes to release, and then we'll finally have done them all for this year. We're working on a updated resource statement. It says targeted January. That's needs to change. It's not quite going to be targeted January, but we're this half of this year. But it's going to include all this drilling. The delay in assays sort of impacts all that. We've now drilled 40 holes. This is all a little bit work in progress, but will be updated on our website very soon. And then there's sort of Ecuador that I don't think we're getting a lot of value for at the moment, but is quite sort of interesting. But that kind of sums up the overview. Happy to take any questions on any of it, including the results.
Great. Great. Thank you very much, Jason, for the informative presentation. We'll now start the Q&A portion of the webinar. A reminder to everyone on the line that you can type your questions into the chat box at any time. We already do have a few questions here. One very popular one. How much cash does the company have, and would you need to raise more money for 2023 exploration plans?
Well, we've been spending on the Elizabeth project about $5 to $6 million a year doing this drilling. We'll need to do more drilling this year. Some of it will take of an infill nature. Once we have the initial resource estimate as well, that'll tell us where some of the holes are. But we would anticipate, that's really what our sort of plans are. We don't have those funds in cash right at the moment. So we would anticipate needing to raise further equity to complete this program.
Okay, great. And obviously you have still some assays pending. How many holes are we waiting for assay results? We're
waiting for 6. So there's 3 from the number 9 vein area, including this hole number 28, where we had over a meter with some nice VG in it some time ago. Back in September, we announced that. The assay turnaround time, especially with the over limits, and a lot of our holes have had these sort of over limits. A nice problem to have, but it adds about a month to the assay time, with further metallic screen testing and things like that. But then we have 2 more holes from the blue vein, some further infill drill holes there that, as we've just announced to, with some nice intersections, with grades 30 to sort of 48 grams. And then we have 1 more from that set we drilled on the west main vein, which is interesting. I didn't really talk about that too much, but that west main vein was, previously drilled not by Tempus, but historically, but never this far south where we've just drilled. And we've drilled 4 holes. We've come up with a number of hits, or some up to over 10 grams per ton, and that's about 220 meters. And the structure is certainly there. And that's about 220 meters further south of any historic drilling. So we will go back and have a closer look at that as well in that area, to do further exploration drilling in that area, that 220 meters. Because I think that could develop hopefully into another vein set or a couple more vein sets there. So we've had a great season actually from a overall drilling perspective, and results now when they finally come. That's great.
Great. And you had mentioned an updated resource for Elizabeth coming up. When would you expect to have those results of that updated resource?
Yes, and that'll include both Black Dome and Elizabeth. So we added about another 5,000 meters of drilling to Black Dome. From that 2009 resource estimate, there was some other historical drilling that wasn't Tempus, a couple thousand meters, and then there's ours. So we're adding about over 20,000 meters and about another 80 holes. The historical resource was based on about 70 holes total drilled that they previously, so it's a significant upgrade there. The delay in assay time is taking time, but we're compiling. We're looking at the database now, doing the QA/QC on the database, it's going to be into the first half, end of the first quarter. I'm hoping, pre-PDAC would be nice in March, but it's a pretty tight schedule to get it all done. But we'll have both done on both Black Dome and Elizabeth. And the previous resource, as I mentioned, was done at $1,000 gold and a 5 or 6 gram per ton cutoff grade. So, it's quite a different world now. So it should be very interesting to see what we have, especially when we're looking at the scale. You know, we look at the options we have, including a production option, and the sort of scale that would support sort of 25,000 ounce sort of production capacity. You know, we may have a significant number of ounces with in relation to that.
Great, great. Now, one question here on the processing facility. Roughly how much would it cost to get that the process facilities up and running?
Well, we've done some work on that. We haven't disclosed all the numbers for some stock exchange rules regions in Australia. But you know, we've had a really close look at it, including upgrading and adding some Nelson concentrators. And, you know, I think it's you know, a significant single digit number to get that back up and running, that mill. And so then you couple that with the mine. We're going to have to do some work on the sort of haul road as well. There'd be a few $1 million to spend there. And then the mine itself, once we have a handle on the resource, we'll have be able to start to look at those sort of things in terms of initial mine planning. But the overall cost is, you know, one of the things that's really working to our advantage is we're starting with a hill. We're coming in at the bottom. It's so you know, single drive there. The mining is relatively simple. The sort of style of mining, these veins are nice sub-vertical, nice continuity, great contact with the black granite diorite against the quartz. It's both great contact for, you know, ground stability and dilution. And now we're starting to see some significant widths. So you know, this could be a nice simple operation with a mill 30 kilometers away. And so, you know, the sort of capital costs, I can't sort of project them at this point in time, but, you know, I think it's got all the attributes of you know, we have this mill already there. This would cost, you know, $60–70 million to replace. And we can get that up going for a nominal amount. And then there's the mine development. So it's becoming very interesting as we get more ounces. I mean, we don't have a mineable resource yet. We have to get the number of ounces, but it's, you know, I love the results. They're great. So that all adds to it. So
great, absolutely. And speaking of Black Dome, are you planning to do any additional drilling there? Could that mine be brought back into production?
It certainly could be. And as you saw briefly on the slide, there's been a minimal amount of underground stoping there, and the vertical horizon is like less than 100 meters. What we want to really understand is where are we in the epithermal sort of vertical horizon there. Before we do more drilling. We did a little bit of drilling on the one side, on the west side. Got some interesting and some highly oxidized ground there. We had a sort of renowned epithermal expert, Jeffrey Hendenquist, come to site and look at the core, etc. We need to do a little bit more work there to see where we are in terms of the boiling point, and where, you know, epithermals have a very defined, you know, horizon, let's say down to a couple 100 meters, 300 meters. Once we know where we're at, and we can do that work very inexpensively. So we've taken samples, and we're going to do, you know, fluid inclusion work where, you know, find a drop of fluid within that rock to know exactly what the temperature setting was when those minerals in those rocks were deposited. So that'll be a lot of guidance. Then we'll be doing smart drilling and know where we're going to drill the holes. And if we're nice, and what we see is in the textures we see is nice fuggy textures, and the quartz, it would seem to indicate we're still high in the system. But we're going to do a little bit more work on that. So yes, in the perfect world, you have Elizabeth and Blackdome, and then this thing really would start to sing. At the moment, that's certainly a blue sky, and we haven't closed off any potential that Blackdome may have.
Great. Shifting focus to Ecuador, what are the plans for this year there? And would you look to bring in partners, or are you planning to keep 100%?
Yeah, as I sort of mentioned, what we've been doing we're doing some more review of the geophysical work we've done, some further interpretation work on that right now. But we're also considering it's getting close to a stage we'd like to bring a partner in on that. So we're focused, as Elizabeth and Blackdome start gaining momentum as they have. It would make sense. It allows us to focus on that and spend our capital on that, and while retaining some upside. So via some sort of option earn-in arrangement, maybe a royalty arrangement. So there's a number of could appeal to sort of juniors given the land position, but also given who our neighbors are with Newcrest and Lundin. There's some obvious owners there as well. So that's something where, as the project's matured a little bit more, and we've been working on it, for the last couple of years. We don't have any immediate plans for the next few months on it while we do this reinterpretation, decide whether we need to do more soil samples or we're confident in identifying sort of drill targets now on that. So they are interesting projects. I'd like to have someone doing more work there than we've been able to do with our focus on Elizabeth Blackdome. So I think the projects certainly justify some further exploration work and drilling on it.
Great. Well, I think that's all the questions. Maybe one final, you had mentioned it, I think, with the final slide, but just to review, what news would we expect to have over the coming weeks from Tempus?
Yeah, we'll certainly have another batch of drill results, which should include some nice ones as well, with what we anticipate with the VG in hole 28 and two more blue vein holes, and then we'll be in touch with the market with regard to our exploration plan and sort of round up what did we learn from this. What is our exploration plan? The next major thing would be the resource estimate, for the project. And once we have that, we can start looking at all the other sort of type of engineering activities as we've talked about. So it's assay results, resource estimate, and see where we go from there, and then the commencement of a further sort of drill season on the project, which would be a combination of infill and exploration to identify more new veins. So
great. And I guess we did have one question come in directly on that, but when might you anticipate drilling restarting in Canada?
Well, typically we're at about 7,000 feet vertical elevation, so it does get some winter. We got in May, early May last year, which is great. So that's May to November is really what we've been able to do drilling. Once we're operating, though, it's a different story. And once we get access to underground drilling, etc., because of the vertical nature of these veins, be nice to do like a lot of other gold mines. You continually add exploration ounces as you do the mining, have access there. But that would operate all year round. It's just difficult when you're on top of the mountain in the wind. You've been there, Tim. You know what it's like. So try it in December. But so we shut down for the drilling in the winter.
Great. Well, lots to look forward to then in the coming months from Tempus. Well, I'd like to again thank Jason Bonson for presenting today. And thanks everyone out there for tuning in. Just a reminder that Red Cloud Securities will be back tomorrow afternoon when our webinar series continues with Seabridge Gold presenting Wednesday, January 11th at 2 p.m. Eastern Time. Have a great rest of your day.
Excellent. Thank you, Tim. Thanks, everyone. Cheers.